Hello football fans, my name is Leon and today I want to share with you my ideas about an alternative European Super League. So in April 2021, 12 European top clubs opened up about their plans of creating a new league that should involve 20 top teams from the Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, Bundesliga and Ligue 1. There should be no relegation, so the 20 teams would keep their spots forever. The fans were raging about this idea, because it didn't fit with European football culture. It felt like the clubs wanted to greed for safe money. On the other side, the current system got to a point where there is a lack of balance. The same clubs dominate their league every year, with rare exceptions like Leicester City becoming the Premier League champion. In the Bundesliga or Ligue 1, for example, you can basically name the champion from the start of the season. Also, teams from smaller leagues like Ajax or Benfica can make as many good decisions as they want. They are limited financially by their small league and can't hold their top players against teams from leagues that generate more money. Then we have the money madness or pay-to-win problem, with teams like Manchester City or PSG buying success with money that comes from outside of football. So I think European football needs a big power shake-up. Therefore, I created a system that could lead the fans, the top teams and the smaller teams, while keeping in mind that we're living in a more international collected Europe than 20 years ago and also providing the possibility of more money generation. In the middle of this new system stands the European Super League, for which I will play as GM, CEO, Commissioner, however you want to call it, for the rest of this video. For the new system, the Champions League would basically be gone, and a lot of teams will be picked out of the top 5 leagues. Also, teams from smaller football countries like Belgium, Greece, Hungary or Sweden will be included. A total of 64 teams will be participating in the new Super League, divided into 2 divisions or 2 leagues. The participants will play most of their games inside the Super League, but there will also be 2 new cups and national organized competitions, as well as end of the season playoffs. A big change to the 2021 version will be the possibility of relegation, so every team has the chance to go up to the Super League if they are successful, but you can also fall down to the national leagues. This video also includes ideas on how to determine the first Super League participants, as well as how this new system could help solving the money madness problem. Here you can see how the Super League would be organized. The 64 teams picked from the national leagues will be divided into 4 leagues or 16 teams. But first, let's create a game plan. Therefore, we look at the current situation. I picked the 4 finalists of last year's Champions League and Europa League. Champions League winner Real Madrid had to play 43 national plus 14 international games in 21-22. Liverpool 50 plus 13. Frankfurt, who dropped out of the German Cup in the first round, played 35 national and 14 international games. The Glasgow Rangers had 46 national and 19 international games, because they also went through Champions League qualification. So these 4 teams had an average of 58.5 games to play, if you exclude off-season, training camp, friendly games and national team competitions. These dates will also not be touched by the Super League. The Super League game plan would look like this. The 40 green games stand for safe games every Super League team has to play. The blue ones are cup games, meaning if you lose in the first round, you will only have to play 1 game in each cup. If you reach the endgame playoffs, you can have up to 8 additional games, including 1 possible playing game. In the relegation playoffs, you have to play up to 3 games. So if you win everything, you would play 62 games a season. If you lose all first round cup games and don't reach any playoffs, it would be 43 games. In total, every team can play max 40 national and 49 international games. So the amounts from the current system would basically be flipped. So now let's go into more detail on the different competitions. The new Super League would take the biggest role in the participating team's game plan. Every team has to play 30 games against the other 15 teams of their league. The magic number for all relegations between Division 1, Division 2 and the national leagues is 3.5. How the teams from each division will be splitted into 2 leagues will change every year. The position for the end of the season playoffs will be decided mostly by the standings of all 4 Super League leagues. How the 14 national game rounds will look like will be organized by the national associations, so I won't go into details about this now. I also installed 2 new cups, my personal favorite part. The League Cup will be played by all 64 Super League teams. The European Cup by the 64 Super League and 64 teams from the national leagues. Both cups will be played in a World Cup after group stage format, meaning that every round is 1 game. If you lose, you're out. If you win, you get to the next round. The rounds will be splitted all over the season like we are used to from national cups. Winning a cup is like a golden ticket for the playoffs and the relegation process. If a National League team wins the European Cup, they will participate in the ultimate playoffs and automatically relegate up to the 2nd division for the upcoming season. So now let's look at these ultimate playoffs. The playoffs start after all regular season and cup games are finished and determine the ultimate Super League champion. 16 teams will participate, while there is 1 play-in round for the last spots. This format is known by fans of American sports competitions like the NBA or NFL. For the determination of the playoff teams, we have to look at the end of the regular season table. Keep in mind with this graphic that there will be 2 first and 2 second divisions. For the first division, the first place will be the league champion, and places 1 to 5 will have guaranteed playoff spots. 6 and 7 will play 1 elimination round for another spot. The last 2 finishers have to go down to Division 2 immediately. The 2 middle red will play 1 game. The loser goes down immediately, the winner to the relegation playoffs. The light reds also play 1 game between each other. Winner stays in Division 1, loser to the relegation playoffs. As there are 2 Division 1 leagues, we have 4 teams in the relegation playoffs, from which 1 will be the 7th team to get relegated. The relegation from Division 2 to the national leagues works in the same way. The Division 2 league champion qualifies for the ultimate playoffs and are guaranteed to move up to the first division, together with both second place finishers, which also have a chance at the ultimate playoffs. The dark green teams play 1 game. Winner goes up, loser to the go up playoffs, together with the light green winner. 1 out of 4 go up playoff teams gets the 7th relegation spot. Keep in mind that the cup winner can't be relegated, so he would move up to the 10th place in the first or 2nd place in the 2nd division. So this is how the ultimate playoff picture would look like. There is 1 game for the play-in round. From the round of 16 there is always 1 home and 1 away game, until you reach the ultimate final. That is 1 game again, basically like the current Champions League KO phase format. But all rounds will be played on ongoing weekends. If you look at this bracket, you might ask, what happens if the League Cup champion is also qualified through Super League standings? In this case, an extra spot is created that will be filled by a play-in round between the Division 2 second place finishers. A second extra spot would be filled by a non-Super League team, probably the winner of the follow-up cup to the Champions League. But those are details now, so let's move on. Now that the game plan stands, the big question emerges. Which teams will participate in the first Super League season? With so many different teams and countries involved, there are a lot of different interests and many negotiations need to be done. I will now show some proposals on how this clash of interests can be solved. First, we have to find out which national associations can and want to be part of the Super League. Then there has to be an agreement on how many spots will be given to each national association. Last, the national associations have to decide which of their clubs will be sent to the Super League. I developed 2 possible algorithms with calculators that determine the claim for each association. Please don't be offended if your country or team is not included. This is just an example. Better let me know in the comments what team or country deserves more spots. So first, Let's look at UEFA's 5-year ranking at the start of the 22-23 season to get a better understanding on how the power in European football is currently divided. You can see that Western Europe is by far the strongest region. Therefore, they will be called the heart of team football from now on. This means that for all upcoming calculations, how far a club is located from the heart of football negatively influences their spot claims. For my first calculation, I looked from an UEFA perspective. The national associations are listed by their 5-year ranking, and all of them are possible Super League participants. I used 3 indicators for the final claim coefficient. The SDK is based on the UEFA 5-year ranking. EWK is based on the number of inhabitants. I gave Israel and Cyprus 0 because they are too far located from the heart of football. Also, Russia gets 0 spots for obvious reasons. The WRK is based on the country's national team world ranking at that point. If you do 3 times SDK plus 2 times EWK plus WRK through 6, you get the claim coefficient on the right. This claim coefficient determines the 3 splits right next to it. The first split stands for guaranteed spots, the second split for relegation spots. So for example, England gets 8 safe spots, Spain 6 safe spots and 1 relegation spot. Bulgaria gets 1 relegation spot. On the bottom half you can see that all countries with none of these spots get 1 extra spot. So at the end we are given 51 guaranteed spots, 24 playoff spots. The 24 teams will have to battle out in 1v1s for 12 more Super League spots. The 64th spot will be played out through a tournament by the 18 extra spot teams. So on this map you can see which teams will be playing in Division 1. How the participating clubs will be divided to Division 1 and Division 2 will be decided by the UEFA 10-year club coefficient. I also gave away the spot inside each association, mostly through the 10-year coefficient. For example, England has 8 guaranteed Super League spots. 6 of these spots are given to the famous top 6. The next upcoming teams are Leicester City, West Ham and Wolverhampton, in this order. Leicester and West Ham are numbers 7 and 8 on UEFA 10-year, made it to the Division 2. The Wolves and all following teams have to stay in the Premier League for now. As many of you probably already recognized, I am a German. So having a better knowledge, I used a different approach for the German 6 safe plus 1 relegation spots. The most successful teams according to the club coefficients are in this order: Bayern, Dortmund, Leverkusen, Schalke, Leipzig, Frankfurt, Wolfsburg, Gladbach and Union Berlin. But there can be other influence factors than only UEFA success, like for example, tradition, club members or location. Bayern, Dortmund, Schalke and Frankfurt are top in all 4 influence categories, so they get their spots. Then there's Union Berlin, who gets the next spot because of their location, being in the capital city and also a former East German team. Next up is Leverkusen, who lacks a little in tradition and club members, but on the other hand was one of the most stable and successful German teams over the last years. For the relegation spot there should be a tournament between traditional clubs, which in this case Gladbach wins. For RB Leipzig there is a big lack of tradition and club members, plus RB or Red Bull would already have a Super League team in Salzburg. This could cause competitional problems, so no spot for Leipzig. So in my personal playoff simulation I had Bilbao, Gladbach, Lille, Rotterdam, Sporting, Rangers, Rapid, Anderlecht, Apoel, Ludogorets, Fehervar and Slovan Bratislava win. Also Karabakh, that can be seen on the bottom right, won the extra spot tournament. In Division 2 there would be many teams from smaller football countries. For the purpose of showing how each Super League could look like, I split the teams by North-South or East-West. Division 1 West would include Spanish, Portuguese, British and French teams, while in the East there are the German-speaking, Italian and Eastern clubs. A North-South split would have British, German and Benelux teams competing in the north, while teams near the Mediterranean Sea would clash in the south. So for a bigger example base, I also designed an alternative algorithm from the EU perspective. This time standings are after the World Cup in Qatar. I included a politic and a distance factor into the inhabitant indicator. The distance factor is lower the more far away a country is located from the heart of team football. The politics factor is higher the more a country is integrated inside the EU. The national indicator completely changed this time. Instead of basing on the world ranking, it's based on each country's success in the World Cup and the Europa Cup, while more recent cups count more. Again, we get a claim coefficient. From the bottom half, only Wales got a relegation spot because of their recent national team successes. So I have a total of 60 save and 8 relegation spots, where I let Wales and Bulgaria win because I could include them in the following maps. Also, Italy and France won because they had the highest rest claims. Looking on the Division 1 team map, there wouldn't be many changes. For Division 2, there are less teams from Far East, what means less travel from the heart of team football. In total, more spots are given to the top 5 leagues. This time filling the teams, I looked out more for location. For example, the Czech Republic. The spot will be given to the capital city Prague instead of Pilsen. Here you can see how the leagues would look like after a north-south or east-west split. Yeah, I kind of enjoyed creating these maps, so this is one only including EU member states in dark blue, as well as former members or countries with special EU treaties in light blue. In this case, there could be spots for Ireland, Slovenia, Finland or a team from the Baltics. You could think about creating new Super League clubs for smaller countries or countries with 2 rival teams on the top to prevent fan fights. If only EU members could participate, there would be a lack of star names with the English teams leaving, so you could argue for a smaller league. Lastly, I wanted to show you this population density map to get a better understanding where many people live and how far distant some countries are. You can see some North African countries like World Cup surprise Morocco are located very close to the heart of club football. If the war ends, Russia has some traditional clubs too. Also, you can see Israel and Cyprus far in the southeast. Both of these countries are part of UEFA. Again, these are all examples. We would see which countries want and can be involved. My girlfriend is Slovakian, and somehow there was always a team from Bratislava included in the previous maps. Am I biased, or did they get lucky? I don't know. But I shouldn't be the one to decide. It was just an example how the problem could get solved. So now that we filled all spots, the first Super League season can be played. But how will it progress over time? Like I said earlier, there will always be 7 teams at the end of the season relegating between the divisions. But which teams go up from the national leagues to the second division? First, we have the winner of the follow-up competition to the Champions League. Then we have 4 winners of the top 4 leagues that play 1v1 for 2 Super League spots. 2 more spots will be played out by the next 8 league champions. Maybe in some years the French champ will be in the relegation game, while the Italian champ has to go to the relegation tournament. This could be decided by a claim over time coefficient. This claim over time also permits the last 2 spots, given to countries without Super League team or big countries with only 1 team. I also included a 4-year cycle to the Super League, in which the teams of a division will be split into 2 leagues, This guarantees even more variety and keeps the Super League spicy. So now there's a 1 year with a North-South split up, then East-West split up, a Central versus Outside split, which reduces the travel distances for teams from the so-called Blue Banana. Lastly, there's a Random split that enables having a clash between German versus Spanish, as well as English versus Italian teams. You see, there are many possibilities. With a lot of changes incoming, there will be many winners and losers. Some benefits will be shown over time, but for now I figured out 5 pros and 5 cons. First, the bad things. We would lose a lot of football culture. Like, there's no clear Spanish or Italian champion at the end of the season. Also, a lot of historic derbies between bigger and smaller clubs would be played less regularly. The Super League teams would have to travel longer distances, which means more cost and more oxygen. Also, the fans need to spend more money and time if they want to visit every game of their Super League team. Furthermore, this new system could create a huge power gap between National League and Super League teams over time. After going down from the Super League, it's hard to come back up. Other differences could emerge over time. Lastly, with so many different countries and associations involved, the whole process before starting the first season could take 4 years, with a lot of political and law work need to be done. On the other side, there would be so many more meaningful games. More clashes of the top teams and extra cup games and playoffs. If the Super League raises fan interest, football could also generate more money from inside and outside of Europe. Then we have the long time needed power shake-up. The top clubs have to prove themselves in a new environment. Successful teams from smaller leagues have their limitations broken, and smaller clubs have a chance to celebrate national successes that became unreachable, with the top clubs leaving the national competitions. Another pro, football connects, and the Super League could help strengthen the boundaries in Europe in these political complicated times. Lastly, implementing the Super League could solve the money madness problem. How? I will explain this in the upcoming files. What pros and cons did I forget? Please tell me in the comments. The money madness problem could be solved by implementing a salary system that's close to the NBA system. Meaning that a player signs a contract with the Super League, but negotiates and gets paid by his Super League team. The team can trade players together with their contracts to a different Super League team. The player can negotiate clauses that save him from getting traded to certain places or completely forbids a trade without his willingness. The Super League permits a certain amount of salary max. No team is allowed to pay more salary than the salary max. And there would also be a limit on how much one player can earn. This destroys this pay-to-win problem. It's more about making good decisions and attracting top players for the teams. In the middle, I showed you how a Super League contract could look like. If the player's team goes up from Division 2 to Division 1, he will earn more money on the same contract. If his team gets relegated to the national leagues, he can either play for the smaller money in the national leagues or search for a Super League team that would take him with his current Super League contract. During trade season, Super League teams can acquire players from National League teams. Therefore, they need to pay a transfer fee to the submitting team that's based on how big the player's Super League contract is. For example, this 10 million a year contract over 3 years would mean a transfer fee of 7.5 million. A 20 million a year contract over 3 years would mean a transfer fee of 15 million euros. The Super League also permits teams a transfer fee max. Through personal or team successes, players can gain financial bonuses from the Super League. teams can gain transfer fee or salary max exceptions. Let's look how all parties would interact. The player either plays for a Super League or a National League team. In the first case, he's under contract with the Super League. There is relegation between Super League and National League teams. The National Leagues are part of the decision-making of the Super League. The Super League permits transfer fee max and contract max for Super League teams. The Super League TV money will be distributed between the Super League and their teams. The teams use the money to play their players and pay other costs. The Super League uses the money for supporting teams who get financially disadvantages through the new system, for example relegated teams. They pay transfer fees and academy support to National League teams and pay Super League players bonuses. The next big player are the fans. I divided the fans into 4 groups. Fans that love meaningful games and top players will most likely watch the Super League. The hardcore team supporters will stay with their team regardless in which competition they play in. Maybe some fans will support the Super League and the National League team in the respective competitions. Lastly, the fans wanting to watch young talents develop should stay with the National Leagues. This could be ensured by forbidding players under the age of 21 from signing a Super League contract, with exceptions for players whose teams go up from the National Leagues to the Super League, or homegrown players with a certain amount of Super League games. With the Super League being such a powerful instance, the question about who controls it emerges. The UEFA, the EU, the teams, the players, the national associations, the fans, or the investors. Maybe there should be an extra instance like the UEFA that negotiates upcoming problems between Super League and National League teams and permits over transfer fees, academy support and financial support for clubs in need. Here's some other ideas. Giving the developing National League teams or the submitting National League teams academy support and extra transfer fee bonuses for players when they sign their second Super League contract, not only for their first. The Super League should be a non-profit or low-profit organization. With low profit, I mean they should pay top workers and save money for financial crisis, but not that all decisions will be taken by their investors. Or maybe they should be controlled by other instances, like the EU or the UEFA. The Super League takes place only every second year, so you wouldn't have ultimate playoffs in World Cup or Europa Cup years.
This presentation shows a lot of maps and graphics about the Super League, and it sounds like a dream. But a dream we are fighting for to change into reality. Nice!
So, if this topic gains enough interest, I'll do a FIFA or Football Manager simulation to see how a Super League season could play out. This would be also found on my channel, The Round in the Angular. My sources for this video are in the description. Now for the final point, I would love you for answering these questions in the comment section. If you made it until here, thank you very much for listening and have a beautiful day.